China wants to replace the United States as the regional power in the Middle East, and big deals with Saudi Arabia are the key. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Saudi Arabia has been a longtime U.S. ally, sometimes even a close friend. All the way through President Trump, too, though he seems slightly less comfortable with the hand-holding. Now, the story of why the U.S. and Saudi Arabia have been friends is a whole other topic, maybe someday on America Uncovered. But the big news is that the Chinese Communist Party is looking to step in. Chinese leader Xi Jinping wants to tie Saudi Arabia to his Belt and Road Initiative, the trillion-dollar global infrastructure plan supported by a seriously terrible propaganda song.
Future's coming out. The Belt and Road is how.
That song is also a virulent strain of earworm. Anyway, the Chinese Communist Party's ultimate goal in improving ties with Saudi Arabia is to become a dominant foreign power in the Middle East. Of course, history has not always been kind to foreign powers in the Middle East, but the Chinese Communist Party probably doesn't know this since it rewrote all the Chinese language history books. I guess nothing happened between 1966 and 1976. Okay, back to Saudi Arabia. It invests heavily in the United States, and it's mainly through the state-owned Saudi Public Investment Fund. It's one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East, with about $300 billion in assets. That's a lot of money. Like investing $3.5 billion into Uber was chump change. By 2030, the Saudi Public Investment Fund plans to invest more than $2 trillion worldwide, and a big chunk of that could end up in China. The head of the Saudi fund was in Beijing last month for a forum on Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. He told CNBC, "This is the first time for me to go out and meet asset managers, companies, Chinese entrepreneurs, and they are really very impressive." And now a spokesman for the fund said they were planning to open a new office in Asia to focus on China. Now wait just a minute. Questionable dealings with Saudi Arabia are supposed to be a U.S. thing. This is just another case of the Communist Party stealing our intellectual property. And they've been working on this for a while. In February, the Saudi Crown Prince met with Xi Jinping in China. They had great things to say about each other. Xi Jinping said the two countries should speed up the signing of an implementation plan on connecting the Belt and Road Initiative with the Saudi Vision 2030. That's Saudi Arabia's own massive economic plan. And the Crown Prince said Saudi Arabia is full of confidence in the bright future of China's development under the leadership of President Xi. That was obviously the right thing to say because the two countries then signed $28 billion in deals. Wait, that gives me an idea. You know, I too am full of confidence in the bright future of China's development under the leadership of President Xi. Can I have $28 billion now? No? How about just enough to pay off my student loans? Okay, how about a tuna fish sandwich? Anyway, that $28 billion was just a continuation of a $65 billion investment and trade deal signed by the Saudi king and Xi Jinping in 2017. It's good to be the king. You can hold hands with every world leader. Many of the Belt and Road projects will include energy grids and ports. There are reasons behind these agreements. China is hungry for oil, especially to fuel the Belt and Road. China gets oil from all over the Middle East and has invested heavily in the region, and that's made China a powerful force, as different countries, including Saudi Arabia, compete for Chinese investment. Now, historically, China has had trouble in the Middle East because they've supported Iran for years, and a lot of other Middle Eastern countries don't like Iran. But the Chinese Communist Party has solved that problem with billions of dollars. Yes, through the Belt and Road, China has become the largest trading partner of the Arab League, including Saudi Arabia as well as Iran. And the Chinese Communist Party could even eventually replace the U.S. as a power in the Middle East. I mean, it's been so fun and easy for the U.S., I can see why China would want a piece of the action. So Saudi Arabia is boosting oil exports to China. And it's helping China build several of its own oil refineries through joint ventures with the Saudi state-run oil company Aramco. Saudi Arabia is also helping build a $10 billion oil refinery in a Chinese-controlled port in Pakistan. That's key Belt and Road real estate right there. These oil deals are important because the latest U.S. sanctions on Iranian oil also apply to China, meaning the Chinese regime either has to defy U.S. sanctions and face the penalty, or it has to find other sources of oil. Though so far, China hasn't reached out to Saudi Arabia for more oil, as far as we know. But to say the China-Saudi relationship is just about oil would be crude. Saudi Arabia is also a strategic location for China's Belt and Road Initiative. It would give China access to the Red Sea through Saudi ports, which means easier access to the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean Sea, where China controls a major port to Europe through Greece. And it's also investing in a key port in Italy. And Saudi Arabia gets more out of this than just a market for oil. It gets an alternative to the United States. Global oil prices are being kept down by increased U.S. shale oil production. And inside the U.S., there's less support for Saudi Arabia, especially over the war in Yemen. However, President Trump vetoed that resolution. Still, Saudi Arabia is looking for new allies. To that end, Saudi schools will now be teaching Mandarin. That decision happened after the $28 billion deal Saudi Arabia and China signed in February, because when you're an absolute monarch, you can just decide those things on the spot. You can also totally sell out the Muslims inside China without public oversight. The Chinese regime has been putting the Uyghurs, a mostly Muslim ethnic minority, into concentration camps and trying to wipe out their language and culture. They call it fighting terrorism and extremism. Well, after that $28 billion deal, the Saudi Crown Prince said China has the right to carry out anti-terrorism and de-extremization work for its national security. And if that involves putting 1 million Uyghur Muslims into Chinese concentration camps, so be it. At least they'll be learning Mandarin. So, what do you think of Saudi Arabia's growing ties with China? Leave your comments below. And now, I'm going to answer a question from one of you who supports China Uncensored through the crowdfunding website Patreon. Today's question comes from Charlie Matsubara. What are the best and worst things about living and working in NYC? What's the best thing? Living in a city that has pancakes this fluffy. I'm kind of obsessed. What's the worst thing? Living in a city that has pancakes this fluffy. I'm pretty sure I've discovered a new type of diabetes. Thanks for your question. And if you'd like me to answer your question on the show, sign up to support China Uncensored on the crowdfunding website Patreon. We rely on your support to keep the show going, since YouTube likes demonetizing videos that are too controversial, which happens to include a lot of videos that criticize the Chinese Communist Party. Thanks for watching China Uncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.